Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Developing the Coaching Skills of Your Managers and Leaders. My name is Jessica. I am on the marketing team with BizLibrary, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on your screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewer. So this is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar, and you can also communicate with us through that question box. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line, or you can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it and it'll expand for you. We like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points throughout today's session, feel free to send those over through the question box located within the control panel. I like to weave the questions in as it relates to the content that we're discussing, and then I'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A. I am recording today's webinar, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording as well as the slides and follow-up information available on our website at bizlibrary.com/bizblog. If you'd like to download the slides for today's session, I put a link to those in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should be able to click on that link and save the slides. I also sent out a link to the slides in the reminder email that you should have received this morning. Happy to say that today's session has been approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's webinar. I'll also email out the completion certificate in an email that you receive within 24 hours. So that webinar will come through GoToWebinar, so just be on the lookout for it in your inboxes. If you'd like more information on certification or recertification, I encourage you to visit hrci.org. Again, my name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary. I graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia with a degree in journalism. I've been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. Very active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of BizLibrary at BizLibrary and also at my own Twitter account at Jess L. Petrie. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around training and development, human resources, and marketing. So if you're on either of those social networks, would love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for BizLibrary. Chris has also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning development and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Chris also taught courses on conflict resolution and discrimination in the HR management program at WashU. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. Chris also has an extensive background. It's not in his basic bio, but he has an extensive background in coaching and career coaching and helping employees make that transition if they're on outplacement. So we're happy to have him here today to kind of bring some of his expertise in the coaching area to today's webinar. Chris is also really active in social media, so you can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne STL, and he's also really active on LinkedIn. So I'm sure he'd appreciate it if you'd reach out and connect as well. All right, to give you just a little bit of background on BizLibrary, BizLibrary is a leading provider of online employee training and e-learning solutions. The award-winning content library contains more than 7,000 online employee training videos covering every business training topic. So that includes communication skills, leadership and management, coaching skills, sales and customer service, compliance training, desktop computer skills, and more. Additionally, BizLibrary's LMS or Learning Management System and Social Learning Technology Platform help HR and training leaders improve and manage employee learning. All right, so enough about us. A couple of poll questions to tee things up for today. Actually, before I open these polls, I'm going to ask a quick informal poll just for some of our record keeping. If you are attending through the GoToWebinar mobile app, or if you're attending through a smartphone or tablet, can you just let me know through the chat? GoToWebinar has had some issues with reporting attendance from the mobile app or a mobile device, so I want to make sure that I get everyone recorded okay. So if you can just let me know through the chat that's located within the control panel, I'll make sure to make note of that. All right, sounds good. All right, so first poll question you should see pop up on your screen in just a minute. So how would you describe your manager training and development? So is it A, ad hoc at best, B, reactionary, C, foundational but nothing's ongoing, D, plans are outlined but not necessarily aligned to the business goals, or E, strategic and continuous?
Hey Jessica, how you doing?
Hey Chris, I'm great. How are you?
Good. Good. So is there a method to your madness on this poll question?
A method.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Is there a method to my madness with which poll question? The one that's up right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to know how people would rate their manager training and development program. So, you know, if they have something that they think is really top notch, we want to know why, and is coaching a part of that? So today's session is really focusing on a key area, you know, that you're going to include in your manager training and development, so developing their coaching skills, but you have to have a manager training program first before you can start to incorporate some of that coaching skill development.
I knew there was a method to your madness. I just wanted to hear you articulate it, that's all.
Oh, okay. Had to back out why I put it.
No, it's good. It's actually a really good question, and you're exactly right. It's kind of hard to train coaches if you're not training the managers to start with. So it's actually a very good poll question.
All right, so I'll go ahead and close it out, share the results with everyone. So it looks like we've got 25% said reactionary, so basically kind of putting out fires. 25% said foundational, but nothing's ongoing. 21% said ad hoc at best. 10% said plan is outlined, but not necessarily aligned to business goals. 18% said strategic and continuous. So we've got a good mix.
Yeah, it is a good mix, and so just an informal question that I would ask, Jessica kind of hinted at it, regardless of where you are on this continuum, do you include coaching skills in your manager training and development? Just let us know if you do. I'd be real curious to learn that. But yeah, great question, and we'll have some very definite suggestions on not only coaching skills, but some of the foundational skills that are necessary for effective coaching, which we'll get into my thinking and I think some of the thought leadership that's out there on that as we get into today's session.
All right, so one additional poll question. We'll make it quick. So what is your manager's biggest challenge when coaching employees? So was it, so this is getting at some of the key aspects of coaching skills. So is it A, building the relationship, B, identifying performance gaps, C, asking questions and problem solving, D, supporting and encouraging, or E, driving results?
Yeah, I'll pipe in here real quick, Jessica. Sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder, but this is the first time we've done this webinar. So I don't know what to expect with this poll question, to be perfectly honest. And second, the post-webinar survey today about today's content will be very, very important to us. Please send us back your thoughts on today's session. We really work hard to make these webinars meaningful and useful to you, and this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'd really like to make sure we hit the mark with this one. So, interesting results, though. This is fascinating to me.
All right, I'll go ahead and close it out. It looks like 27% said driving results, 23% identifying performance gaps, 21% asking questions, 17% supporting and encouraging, and 12% building relationships.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And like I said, I didn't know really what to expect. I am a little surprised that driving results got the most votes, but not by a lot. I I really thought the relationship might get the most votes as the biggest challenge. So that's kind of interesting to me. So yeah, we'll have to follow that one as we do this webinar more frequently, Jessica. But interesting results. Again, I wasn't real sure what to expect, but interesting stuff. So
yeah, and some of the added comments from attendees are, there needs to be an all of the above, or adding the option, so actually making time for coaching. That's a big challenge for the managers. Expanding coaching skills. So those are some of the things that people have added.
Okay, and again, going back, I should know, when we ask our participants to give us feedback, we get it in real time. So those are actually outstanding suggestions that we do need to include. So good stuff.
Yep,
really
appreciate that. All right, yeah, Chris, I'm going to pass the ball over to you. We have a high-level outline of everything that we're going to get through today, what hopefully you'll take away from today's session. So if you want to lead us through that, and we'll keep going. Looks good to me.
You should see the what we hope you'll learn slide. Is that displaying?
Yep.
All right. So we have 4 high-level objectives for today. We want to explain why coaching is important for your employees and organization. And we just want to lay out, just real quickly, some business case numbers for you. We're big on that, so we just wanted to provide, there's some competitive reasons to do it. We want to talk to you about how to adapt coaching and leadership styles to make them work well, situation to situation. Then I want to really talk about what is coaching, and there are 3 key elements to it, and then we want to talk about coaching models, why they are and why they're not helpful. I have some very definite ideas about that, which may surprise you and may not. I don't know. We'll find out when we get there, I guess. Okay, so let's jump in. We've got a lot to cover, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to take questions as we go through today's session. I'm a sports fan. I have been for a long time, and growing up, some of my idols were not necessarily always players. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I always loved the coaches for some reason. John Wooden, UCLA basketball coach, he won 10 NCAA basketball championships over 12 seasons. He won 7 in a row. He was known for motivating through a calm, simple approach to success with a huge emphasis on execution and fundamentals, but had a very definite personality. Ray Miller is the next one to the right. He was a pitching coach for a number of years, and he was known, regardless of the type of staff he had, whether it was a young staff, inexperienced, or a veteran staff, for a really simplistic approach to pitching at the big league level. And it was really 3 things: work fast, change speeds, throw strikes. In fact, Doug Drabek, who was a famous pitcher in the 80s, had that on a T-shirt that he wore even long after he worked with Ray Miller. Work fast, change speeds, throw strikes. Real simple, just a simple mantra, easy thing to understand. Then in the lower left-hand corner, it's Charlie Lau. He's a major league hitting coach, famous for working with George Brett, among others, but he was famous for Lau's laws on hitting, and he developed a real systematic approach that identified 5 typical flaws in a major league hitter's swing so that hitters could sort of self-correct as they went through games, but really worked to take something that a lot of people made complicated and simplified it. And in the lower right-hand corner, a sport that I've grown passionate about over the years, football, as they call it in Europe, soccer as we call it here, Jose Mourinho. He's currently the coach at Chelsea Football Club. He's won 2 European championships, one with FC Porto, a team from Portugal, low-budget team, won a major championship. But he, like the other coaches, he's got a very different personality. He's very fiery and passionate, but he's known for simplifying a system in a sport that a lot of coaches make very complicated. And he is known for taking players and putting them in unique situations where they can be successful. So the thing about this collection of coaches and other famous, even business coaches, that I find very useful when I think about my coaching experience is this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing, that there are different ways to be successful. And each one of these gentlemen, and there are famous women coaches too, but every successful coach has found a way to do it in their own unique way. All right, but why is it important? Let's start with that. Why is it important? Organizations with senior leaders who coach effectively and frequently improve their business results by 21%. It's a 21% improvement on the bottom line. And that's a Bersin report from 2012, I believe. So it just makes business sense. It just makes business sense. And then in 2011, Bersin published a phenomenal, far-reaching report about leadership development, and skill gaps. And in a survey as a part of that report of CEOs, this was the top 6 managerial skill gaps that CEOs identified. The #1 skill gap was coaching, and I haven't seen anything that says that's changed. So CEOs said our managers don't coach well enough. Knowing that effective coaching, organizations that are dedicated to it and do it well, have significantly better business results. So there's a huge disconnect between what we need and what's effective out there in the marketplace. So this is important. I mean, it is really critically important. We also found a wonderful piece of work written by Eric Parslow, and it's called The Manager as Coach and Mentor. This is a great quote. Coaching is a process that enables learning and development to occur, and thus performance to improve. And we're going to keep coming back to that concept quite a bit today. To be successful, a coach requires a knowledge and understanding of process, as well as the variety of styles, skills, and techniques that are appropriate to the context in which the coaching takes place. I love this quote for a whole range of reasons. First is that Parslow makes no bones about the fact that coaching is a process. It is not an event. It is not something that happens one-off and you walk away. It's not a single conversation. This is a process. And I love the concept that he ties it to learning and that it's linked to improved performance. I also love the second paragraph here, where he pretty well lays it out there and identifies part of the problem that organizations and practitioners have with business-based coaching. There's just a whole range of ways to get at it, styles, skills, techniques, but it's sometimes very contextual. And we have to come to grips with that. And we'll talk about that's one of the problems I have with some of the coaching models that are floating around out there. But this is a fantastic, fantastic quote. So you're going to get a copy of these slides, but this is a quote I definitely encourage you to really kind of come to grips with. And this kind of ties into what Eric was saying. You know, I just was digging around and kind of tinkering with this notion of coaching. You know, what is it exactly? Because it's complicated. It's not always really simple to get your hands on sort of a unifying definition. We've got coaching in a business coaching. We've got in a business context, which is really what we're going to talk about broadly today. We've got executive coaching, which is typically performed by an outside expert to assist senior executives with specific development issues, challenges, or questions. It's frequently part of a corrective action. Sometimes executives just hire coaches for themselves to have sounding boards, somebody outside the organization. Then there's career coaching, something that I did a lot. I've actually done all of the top 3 here. But career coaching is somebody that helps another individual with, some sort of a career roadblock or issue with their career. It can happen while they're either currently employed. Frequently it happens when people are between jobs, but it's to help people either acquire job search skills or refine job search skills or move their career in a different direction. And there's a new type of coaching, life coaching, that's popped up. It's just directed at helping people find a greater sense of fulfillment and happiness. I mean, there's just all kinds of confusing definitions out there. So, with all of this floating around, it's no wonder that we see all sorts of confusion about what to do, how to do it. I think that leads some organizations to kind of, throw their hands up and go, oh my gosh, we just, it's really going to be impossible to figure out a framework to train our employees. And Jessica, you found this fantastic series of courses. in our library, which I think begins to create some clarity around this. And you put together a couple of slides for us. If you don't mind, I'd love for you to present these to us.
Sure, Chris, I'd be happy to. So again, this is just, kind of part, the five course series. So they're all pretty short, but I thought this was a great way to kind of look at the relationship between your leadership style and how you apply coaching skills or coaching processes to that. So if you think about, so two key aspects of leadership. So you have encouragement and you have empowerment. So if you think about encouragement is, providing feedback, giving praise. And empowerment's really the level of direction or orders that are needed. So if you're delegating or giving direction, how much of that does the employee need? So looking at the continuum, so you have encouragement and empowerment. So, and then your employees or who you're coaching likely fall into 4 different categories. So you can look at them as rookie, contributor, key player, and captain. Kind of an obvious application talking about coaches and sports coaches, but it works well in this case. All right, so if you look at it, you look at the rookie. So this is someone that's new to the job, so they likely need, high tell and low praise. So basically, they need a lot of direction, they need a lot of guidance and help as far as how to do their job successfully. They likely have low praise. Now, I don't know if I absolutely agree with that. I think that people still need a level of encouragement, especially when they're building their confidence. But that's just for the purpose of this, that's what that's saying. The next level of employee and how you would adapt your leadership style. So looking at someone that's a contributor. So this is someone that's moving into their role, they're gaining confidence, they're getting some job knowledge. So they likely need high tell and high praise. So this is really where you want to instill more confidence, get them more comfortable, getting them to explore their skills, explore their strengths. Next category of employee or coachee is key player. So you look at that, the green dot there, it says you have low tell and high praise. So really they're spreading their wings. They need, much less direction, kind of give them the objectives, kind of reinforce what's needed and let them go. And then build their confidence again with the encouragement and praise. And then the captain. So these are your employees. Basically, you're a sounding board for them. So basically, they know what needs to get done. They know how to do it. They just need you once in a while to make sure they're on the right path, or maybe give them some feedback about how they're doing, if they're in the right direction. So that's kind of the basics. I thought it was a good balance. And application of adapting your leadership style depending on the employee or the coachee that you're interacting with and the coaching situation that you're within.
Yeah, tying into what Eric Parslow talked about, the styles and the situation and the context. And by the way, I find it somewhat surprising that you choose to challenge an authority on the subject, but I actually agree with you too. I'm not sure that every employee is going to fit neatly into these quadrants, and that ties actually directly into the next slide that we prepared that I wanted to talk about, and it goes right here. So go back to what Jessica was talking about. You got the rookie, and one of the things that wasn't accounted for on the slide from the series of EJ4, which was based solely on the relative experience between the coach and the coachee, there are a wide range of factors that build this relationship and create a context and create layers and shadings of gray and all sorts of different ways that this has to work. And Jessica was saying, well, I just don't know if I agree with this all the time. Her instincts are spot on, because the chart made it seem like, well, it's going to be here or here based strictly upon experience. That is certainly a factor. But there are personality differences. Some people thrive on and need different types of feedback in different frequencies, feedback and encouragement provided in different ways. There are different learning preferences. Going back to, again, what Parslow told us, that coaching is about learning. It's about learning and development. At its core, a coaching relationship is about continuous learning. And then we've got distance and technology, which is a factor, by the way, that is a recent development in this area. up until, we had virtual workplaces and distant, remote employees, you really coached people face-to-face almost exclusively. And that's not the case anymore. Jessica and I were talking before we started today's webinar. Jessica lives and works through her home office in Chicago, and I live in St. Louis. We work very closely together, and so how do we make this element of our relationship work? Well, we both have to be comfortable with the distance and technology, and all these other factors come into play. What are the objectives of the relationship? What are you trying to accomplish? And then the relative experience in a number of areas come into play. If you go to the chart that Jessica provided coming out of the EJ4, rookie, contributor, key player, captain, the relative experience level there had to do with on the job, and that's certainly a critical factor. But also the relative experience of the coach. Do you have a new coach? Do you have a very experienced coach? Do you have an expert level coach? These things all matter and all play into how this relationship begins to form and develop and how it works. Jessica, I see a lot of comments and questions coming up. Is it appropriate to take them now before we move into the models, or should I keep going?
Yeah, so we got a great ad from Yanet. So we actually got two questions. I'm going to take one now and then save one for later. So she commented, we talk about encouragement and empowerment, but how can we encourage and empower a culture of contagious leadership? How can we create a culture where leaders coach and develop leaders and then in turn continue the cycle? That's hard to do without being a threat.
Well, it is when you're working in an environment that tends to be more hierarchical. What you're describing on it is the desire for a flat, collaborative, sort of non-siloed organizational structure and culture, and you're trying to create that, develop it, move towards that in an organization where you've got some people still clutching to the old hierarchical approach to work in the world. Frequently it's a generation conflict. It can be sometimes personality conflicts. There's a whole range of places where those conflicts can arise. And my advice to you is just to be patient. Cultural shifts take time, and they're not easy to achieve. And culture changes come from two directions. They come from the top, so you have to get a buy-in from senior leadership that a collaborative, flatter organization is going to be important for the future success of your organization. That is, collaborative organizational structure is going to be better for information sharing and innovation. We're going to be a more productive company. And it's going to be important from the grassroots. That is, as you begin to bring people into the company, the way you define and think about a successful employee, it needs to include a view of success where you're bringing in people that are wired to collaborate. And with those two pieces in place, eventually that cultural push in that direction will overcome that inertia of wanting to hold on to the past. Cultural change is difficult. I wish I could tell you it's easy, but it's not. And you just have to keep talking and keep talking and keep getting that message out there that this is how we look at success, so that what begins to look like a threat is people who will not collaborate, and what looks like success is people who will. That's when you get to that point, you've gotten there. Okay, so coaching models. I've mentioned them before, and there's a whole range of them. We just threw 6 of them at you here. Grow, Oscar, Cigar, Coach, Clear, Steer. I mean, there's a bunch of them floating around. I mean, we could put a lot more of them up if we wanted. All of these coaching models are interesting to me because without exception, they all describe a process. None of them describe the art of coaching. In other words, you go from, use Oscar as an example. We go from outcome to situation to choices and consequences to actions and then review. And then we start again. But they don't really explain very effectively how you transition across them. Are they linear? Are they nonlinear? Nor nor do these models do a very good job of preparing either party to the coaching relationship for really how this is going to work, nor do these models do a very good job of explaining in detail the complex skills, behaviors, and competencies necessary to effectively deliver coaching results for the organization. So that's the weakness of the coaching models. The great thing about the coaching models, which I do like, and it doesn't matter which one you pick, is that they really help prove that coaching can be learned. You can teach these processes, and we can, in fact, teach the skills necessary to do these things. So there's encouragement and some cautions in adapting or choosing any of these models. And I've worked with a lot of these models over the course of my career. I've done coaching and teaching to some of these models for organizations who want to grow or one of the others. And there's some real value to these structures. They help. Jessica, you just asked an interesting question before we got started. You want to repeat that real quick? Because I thought it was a real prescient but very interesting question.
I don't know. It's a little elementary, actually.
No, it wasn't, because you've never really been taught to coach.
You know, I have not been in a formal coaching program or environment, but it's like, why do they have to all be these acronyms? So why is it, you know, everything is a word, you know, so it's grow, Oscar, cigar. Like, why do you have to apply those? Is it that complicated that you can't run through the process in your head, or is it really helpful when you're in a coaching situation?
So as a recovering coach, and sometimes current coach, I'll tell you, sometimes it's because we're knuckleheads, one, but two, it's because it's helpful for the coach as an internal mnemonic memory device to shift and recognize when I'm in this particular part of the process. I don't sit there and tell, you know, one of my employees, okay, now we're in, you know, use grow as an example, now we're going to talk about reality. But it helps me recognize, oh, okay, so now we're in reality, or I need to plan a meeting to discuss reality so I can begin to apply the model. The acronyms are really for the coach. That's the other weakness of the models, is they're very coach-focused, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But these are devices for the coach. These are all coach-focused, which, like I said earlier, there's strengths and weaknesses to the models. The weaknesses is these are very process-driven, but the other big weakness is
Hey, Chris, lost your audio. All right, looks like I sent a note over to Chris that we lost his audio, but I'll go ahead and help him out until he gets things sorted out. So basically, what we want to emphasize with this is that there's nothing wrong with the models. For many coaches, one or more of the models will be incredibly useful. There's really no one-size-fits-all solution when dealing with, you know, actual people. So when we're in human resources and training and development, that's our widget, people. So not everything is going to fit the same person, and not every coaching model is going to fit right out of the box. Each coach, employee, and situation will be different, so the models that we use can be modified, and these are some of the ways that we want to look at that. So basically, when looking at coaching models, they should help the coach assess current performance, help them identify gaps or areas for performance improvement. So how can we help this employee reach a higher level? Help them develop a plan to close those gaps. So we need some sort of way for that employee to develop those skills, whether it's a development plan or it's an action plan, or if it's something more informal, how are we actually going to achieve that? And finally, how to deliver and act on the plan. So these are actually kind of pointing to some of those key areas that we talked about in that starting out in that poll question that we asked earlier, what is the biggest challenge? So how do we deliver and act on that plan? So how do we help that employee improve performance?
Jessica, am I back?
Yep, you are back.
I am really sorry, everybody. I don't know what happened. Somebody was trying to dial in on my phone, and it must have interfered with the audio line, so I apologize for that. So, yeah, Jessica, thanks. It was a perfect explanation of where we are. So let's use this as a foundational, it's kind of led to all of this, that coaching is building one-on-one relationships and managing a process that results in specific improved performance in targeted areas or a targeted area, which builds right on Eric Parslow's quote earlier. But there's a really super simple, practical definition of what we're trying to get at. And so these are the elements. It's about relationships. It's a process aimed at improved performance through continued learning, okay? And that's what goes into being a successful coach. So regardless of the model, regardless of how you get there, this is what it is. There's three elements: relationships, process, aimed at improved performance. This is another great quote. Today's coaches must be multifunctional and be equally competent as a manager, tactician, trainer, psychologist, physiologist, and sometimes even a counselor. You simply cannot coach the same way as you did 10, 15, or 20 years ago for a number of reasons. I would even suggest 5 years ago. But it is a much different work world today. It's just changed. And then you add to that sort of this kind of continuum of our manager obligations or leader obligations, but on one end of the continuum we have just sort of the basic kind of compliance needs of being a manager. And on the other end of the continuum we have our pure performance management, where we're really trying to achieve goals and drive our team to, to great things. And we're working along this continuum all the time. And our coaching needs, our coaching role changes depending upon where we are in this continuum. So this is not a linear, one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. And then on top of that, we have our employees. And ultimately, from their perspective, this relationship has to look and feel like it's about them, or it does not work. So as a coach, so this is a great checklist, sort of a coaching process checklist. Encourage your coaches to kind of look for these 7 elements from the employee or coachee's perspective. Is it positive? Is this aimed at the future? Is there future orientation? We're going to improve performance looking ahead. Is it true two-way communication? Is this something where the employee coachee feels truly empowered to be a part of this? It's not just telling. The coach listens more than talks, but the employee must be committed to frank discussions about needs. The coach must be heavily invested in the success of the employee. In fact, I would say the coach must be singularly invested in the success of the employee. And there must be a commitment to continuous learning by both parties in this workplace, with the change coming at us so rapidly. In this, you've heard that term. If you've been at any of our other webinars, you've heard us use the acronym VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's this work world we're in today. It's used to describe this work world. We have to be committed to continuous learning if we're going to be successful. So we have to be committed to that. And last but not least, there has to be a desire on the part of both parties for continued improvement. But if the coachee, if the employee feels like these 7 elements are there in the relationship, your coach is doing a pretty good job. Your coach is doing a pretty good job. So how do they get there? If you're looking for what success as a coach looks like, this is it. This is the picture of that person. There are traits, skills, and behaviors that they should exhibit. The traits are they need to be positive, they need to be future-oriented, and these need to be curious people. They can't be folks that are willing to accept the status quo and just kind of take what's put in front of them. They have to be people that are going to go look for new and interesting ways to look at things. In terms of skills, they need to be collaborative, they need to be effective learning facilitators, but they also need to be educators and teachers. Going back to that 4 square, that chart that Jessica showed us earlier, There are times in every employee's career and during the coaching relationships when we have to educate and teach. There are other times when the requirements are going to be much more along the lines of sounding board or facilitator of learning. And we've got to be adept at both. And then behaviors that we have to exhibit. Continuous learning. It's hard to be involved with and encourage learning and be a facilitator if we're not dedicated to that ourselves. We have to be outwardly focused, and we have to be active, and engaged listeners. So if you're looking for, we use this sometimes a lot, if you're trying to define success, what does success look like? That's it. Those are the traits, skills, and behaviors in general that we're looking for. So we wanted to provide for you sort of a foundational coach's toolkit. And we're going to provide for you 4 competencies, high-level competencies. This is sort of like, I just recently moved my daughter to Texas. She just took a full-time teaching job at Texas. So we had to go to the hardware store and get her a toolkit because she's going to live alone. She's got to do some things. So what are the foundational tools? What's a foundational toolkit for somebody living on their own? That's sort of what we wanted to provide here. What's a foundational toolkit for coaches? There are more sophisticated tools that more sophisticated coaches can acquire later, but if you're looking to build foundational skills, this should get you started. So, competency, communication, the key skills, active listening. We need to teach our coaches to frame and ask effective questions. I tell people around here you can never get great answers unless you ask great questions. And this is really important, but you don't, in this type of a relationship, you're not going to ask good questions unless you're listening very well. So those 2 pieces really, really are important. And the third piece of this are courageous conversations. Part of coaching sometimes is talking people back for making poor decisions about choosing a career path that they're not well suited for. And sometimes we have to help people understand the realities of where they are in their career or what's happening with their job. So courageous conversations is a big, big piece of that. But we have to teach people to do that with understanding and empathy and kindness so that it's not a negative, so that employees walk away empowered and motivated to continue to be engaged with us, right? So here are the outcomes that we're looking for. These are the things that we want to be able to accomplish with this competency applying these skills. We want to identify obstacles to employee success. We want to help employees find solutions or ways to overcome those obstacles. We're not going to overcome the obstacles for them. We want to help the employee find them. We want to establish agreed upon definitions of success and develop plans of action. And we want to gain commitment and engagement from the employee, okay? So here are 3 questions. We're talking about asking good questions. Here are 3 questions every manager should be asking. Does the employee have the capacity to perform? And you want to think about that in 2 different time frames, in their current role and in the role as it will look in 6 months or further out. And that's a really, really important way to think about this, because in theory, your organization's growing and developing. Does the employee have the capacity to grow with you? Is the employee curious? I am a huge, huge proponent of finding curious people to work with. I think this is a trait that is irreplaceable in this marketplace, finding people who want to learn, who just explore and investigate. I love that trait in people. And do employees have a positive attitude? Does this employee have a positive attitude? If you've got those 3 traits in an employee, you likely have either an A player or an employee with the potential to be an A player. If you can develop those behaviors and encourage those traits in employees, you can take somebody from being a C to a B and B to an A. These are incredibly powerful, important traits to build in your employees. Jessica, anything to add to that? Because you were instrumental in helping me understand the importance of these things.
No, I mean, I think you know, it's a different viewpoint. So looking at the fact that maybe an employee, looking on the flip side of it, maybe an employee isn't coachable. So helping your managers recognize that. So why invest their time and invest in this employee if they aren't going to be able to improve their performance or they aren't going to be able to be coachable? So being able to balance that and recognize that early on so that you're not, potentially setting your team up for failure, setting yourself up for failure. So I don't want to take the negative side of it, but I think that it's something that managers can really struggle with because it's a hard thing to identify and it's a hard call to make.
Yep, it is, which goes back to that third of the skills, courageous conversations. And these are the questions that you have to ask, and if the answer is no to these, that's where the courageous conversations comes into play. Got to address this stuff. Okay, so the second of the toolkit, the second of the competencies that we're going to talk about is performance management. Now, this term gets used a lot, and sometimes I think misused, frankly. So I want to use this as a competency concept. And the idea here is that what does it take to actually improve, not just manage, but actually improve the performance of our employees? All right, so the key skills, a true understanding of employee engagement and motivation. Okay, and there are two different things, but a true understanding of that. The ability to set goals and the ability to delegate. We have to teach our managers and our coaches to let go occasionally. Okay, so the things that we're going to be able to do with these skills in place is effectively identify strengths and weaknesses in our employees. We want to build on our employees' strengths and learn to minimize weaknesses. We want to outline goals and objectives and help set them, understand how to prioritize and capitalize on strengths, and how to build competencies and skills in key areas with our employees with the goal of improved performance. So those are the outcomes that we're trying to drive to through effective performance management. Okay? So again, so the second of the four competencies, communication, obviously a critical foundational piece for any employee, and then performance management for our coaches. This is a great quote from Rebecca Ray, Employee Engagement in a VUCA World. We used that acronym earlier. With each generation entering the workplace, a greater emphasis is placed on continual development as these new employees know that they are unlikely to stay more than a few years. It's about what they can develop and acquire to take to the next stop in the career journey. We know that effective leaders are one of the most important influences on levels of engagement. So this isn't just something that's nice to think about. This isn't something that's just sort of a like to have in the workplace. Teaching our managers, really getting them to understand what drives true employee engagement is incredibly important. There's a great study released each year by Gallup, the State of the American Workplace. Go get it. Go read it. It talks about a direct line connection between the performance of our managers and the level of employee engagement, and it is stunning. All right, the third of the four elements in our coaches toolkit, business acumen. This was also one of the 6 skills missing, the skill gaps identified by CEOs and our managers. And I don't think enough organizations pay attention to business acumen training and education. I'm convinced of it. All the years I've been doing employee development and training, I've run across just literally, I can count on one hand, the fingers on one hand, the number of organizations that I've worked with that actually took development in this area seriously. Organizations just sort of expect employees to pick this up through osmosis or something. But it's important, so don't give it short shrift. But the key skills are a deep understanding of business operations and functions, both within your organization, within your industry, and just basic stuff, just sort of like spreadsheet and balance sheet literacy. The ability to make decisions in industry knowledge. Provide development opportunities in these areas. This is really, really important. And the outcomes here are going to be extremely important for your coaching. By having a professional level understanding of what's going on not only in your industry but your company and with the competition, you can really provide a different type and quality of coaching for employees in terms of decision-making, risk-taking, things that they need to be doing, you can really begin to identify and understand influencers and key stakeholders within your organization, outside, help connect employees to key people who can help them, who can help develop them and guide them, and you can help explain to employees in clear detail how decisions are made within your organization and within your industry. Step back and think about that for just a second. How many times have we been baffled by, just baffled by, why things are done and how completely unsatisfactory it is to be told, well, this is the way it is? Well, no, it's not just the way it is. Somebody, someplace, decided to do things this way, whether it's in our company or in our industry or in the regulatory environment. And this is where business acumen skills become so important. Being able to sort of peel away those layers of mystery and get down to the why can really help clarify for you and for your employees and the people that you're coaching the why to so many things that you're doing. Business acumen is hugely important. And then the last and probably the most important of the tools in the coach's toolkit is emotional intelligence. There are really two pieces of this that we want to focus on: self-awareness and motivation and regulation. That is, how do our emotions really impact people around us and how can we control them, and the ability to build and maintain effective relationships. And this is going to help us guide employees through workplace conflicts and difficult situations, which is a key component of coaching and successful coaching. It's going to help us be more adaptable in a fast-changing workplace. This VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Emotional intelligence is just really, it's sort of the price of admission, I think, for managers today. And then a positive response to diversity in thought and culture. The workplace is not going to get simpler, folks. It's going to get more and more complicated. And then we wanted to provide just a real quick sort of distinction between two terms that are frequently confused. We have focused on coaching, and it is different than mentoring. And this is a great quote. Jessica found these two quotes. We're going back to Eric Parslow, the manager's coach. To be successful, a coach requires a knowledge and understanding of process, as well as a variety of styles, skills, and techniques that are appropriate within the context in which the coaching takes place. And this is a great quote about mentoring executives from Clutterbuck and Mengensen. Mentoring is offline help by one person to another in making significant transitions in knowledge, work, or thinking. So there are different types of relationships. Both are about learning. Both are about knowledge transfer. But coaching is more specific to targeted areas of improvement. Mentoring is more strategic and longer term. Okay? So that's kind of a way to get at that. So key takeaways. We want you to understand that coaching is a relationship based upon communication and a commitment to continuous improvement. Coaching is a skill that should be developed and adapted based on the employees being coached. And great coaches have key traits and skills and behaviors that can be taught. We can improve the coaching skills of our managers through training and development. Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you, mute myself, get a drink, and take a few questions.
Sounds great, Chris. So we should have a few minutes for questions if you want to post them into the question box located within the control panel. I have a couple of recommended resources for all of today's attendees. So in addition to that coaching skills video course series that I referred to earlier, so again, it's a 5 course series, a great foundational knowledge for new managers and managers alike. Also have a video on active listening. This is a newer course to the Biz Library collection. It's a good one. One of my favorites is Great Managers Help People Hone Their Strengths. So this is helping your managers really capitalize on that, developing the strengths of their employees. If you've read the book First Break All the Rules from Marcus Buckingham, it features that author. There's also Check Your Six, so practical measures of workplace success, and then additionally a 6-course series on emotional intelligence. So that includes developing self-awareness, self-motivation, self-regulation, effective relationships, and developing empathy. So all these would be great to include in your coach's toolkit or in your manager development program. If you want to try out any of those resources or the 7,000 additional courses that we have available in the Biz Library collection, I invite you to do so. I'll put up a quick poll. You're welcome to do a free 30-day trial, test out any of the resources, or if you'd like your managers to try them out, they're welcome to as well. So again, I'll put a quick poll up. Just let me know if you are interested in trying them out. All right, Chris, so we got a good question in from Yanette. So she asked this a little bit earlier, so I want to make sure that we get to it. So she asks, I believe coaching is a tactical process to develop that skill. And most leaders I come across these days are very technical and focused on the bottom line. How can we get leaders to move away from that technical bottom line mindset when coaching? I think you're on mute still, Chris.
It would help if I would unmute myself. I'm sorry about that.
We should do like a dub of how many times, like a jam session of all the webinars. Oh, I think I left myself on mute. But anyway, besides the point.
Sorry about that, everyone. That's a really great question, and it's difficult because obviously we are big believers in learning and development with a bottom line orientation. We're about bottom line benefit. So the idea that sort of leaders are interested in technical kind of bottom line benefit, and if they stay too focused on that during coaching, and Yanette's right, it can poison a coaching relationship if there's too much emphasis placed during the coaching on pushing the bottom line forward. Remember, the focus of the coaching relationship is on the employee. Going back to that 7-point checklist, if the employee doesn't view the relationship with those 7 elements, some blend of those 7 elements, it's got to be positive and forward-looking and about their continued improvement. And the coach has to be invested in the employee's success, okay? That's the point of coaching, all right? So that's the place to begin. You have to redefine success of the coaching relationship for those leaders who are too bottom line focused, and then teach them where that focus is appropriate, and that's in team leadership and in performance management. That's appropriate then. Well, look, here's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to these goals, which do in fact promote a bottom line benefit, and we're going to develop and we're going to build these skills. But when you're coaching, that conversation, that relationship's got to be different. But you have to learn people to separate those two and step into that relationship with a different mindset. But that's really the trick, is what's the focus of success given the situation.
All right, great question. This next question, let me pull it up. All right, so this one comes from Barbara. She asks, do you have any materials that could help HR guide management to a different mindset?
Yes, Barbara, I have a 10-pound rubber mallet that I'll put in the mail to you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's another really difficult question. I mean, you guys are asking really good questions today. And I thought Barbara said, I'll take it. We're getting back to that cultural shift, because that's really where you have to get people to. So start with that infographic that we provided at the beginning and dig into that burst in research that talks about the value to the bottom line of effective coaching. So that's the first thing. Okay, if we coach, if we do a good job of coaching at the senior level, we have a chance of being 21% more profitable than if we don't do it first. Second, coaching means the following, and give them a good definition of what coaching actually involves. That it requires the following traits, it requires a different skill set, and it requires the freedom to develop people in a different way. So Barbara, I think if you'll download these slides, that would be a beginning point. We also just released an ebook that I think would give you some help as well. So take a look at that information, and then if you want to chat about this, email us. We'll be more than happy to talk with you and provide some additional guidance if that would be helpful.
All right, great questions today. For those of you that are attending for HRCI credit, I put a link to the completion certificate in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll also email out the completion certificate. You'll receive that in your inbox actually today in about 2 hours, so about 4 p.m. Central Time. The most important thing is the program ID number. That's what you'll need to record with HRCI. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, jpetrie@bizlibrary.com. I hope you'll consider joining us for a future webinar. We have another one this week, so the 5 barriers to effective training programs and how to crush them. Also one coming up on succession planning, and then also on social leadership development. All of our upcoming webinars are on our website at bizlibrary.com/webinars. If you want to access the recording from today's webinar, any of the slides or follow-up information, I'll post all of that on our blog after today's session. So that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Chris, for presenting.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. We really appreciate it. Again, give us some your thoughts on how the webinar went. We're interested in learning how we can improve this one. This is our first try at this, so we hope we hit the mark a little bit. Thank you all.